Greetings, I'm Socratic Vet. Every idea has a crack. Let's press on it and see if it breaks. So most of us think we know what happened in violent encounters because we watched a clip, read a headline, or heard someone summarize it for us. But conflict doesn't unfold in headlines. It unfolds in seconds. It unfolds under fear. It unfolds in confusion. And here's the uncomfortable truth. The camera does not see everything, but it does see things that the people involved in the altercation cannot. A camera has no adrenaline, it has no fear, it has no tunnel vision, but it also has no context, no depth perception, no ability to feel intention. And a camera only sees what its angle, timing, and framing allow. I intended to talk about the deaths of Renee and Alex Pretti. And this has taken me a while because there is so much doctored footage and everything else out there that it took a long time to kind of digest it objectively. And all that brings me to is, instead of directly talking about them, I think we have to ask a harder question. How do we judge an event when the observers see differently, not more, not less, but differently than the participants? Because if we get that wrong, we get everything wrong as a society. So let's talk about the fog of war problem. Anyone who has ever been in a real fight, not a movie fight, not a choreographed fight, but a real one, where the stakes can lead up to death, knows a few things. One, your vision collapses down to just what's in front of you. Your hearing distorts, your hand shakes, your reason lags behind your action. You move first and understand later. You don't know what's happening beyond the immediate threat. You don't understand what the other person is doing clearly. You don't see clearly what they're reaching for or holding. You're acting inside of a fog made of adrenaline, fear, confusion, and the sheer speed of real violence. And here's the uncomfortable truth. The fog of war does not only exist on battlefields. It exists in every violent encounter. So the question becomes, if no one in the moment has the full information, what standard should we use to judge their decisions? This is not a rhetorical question. It's the foundation of everything that follows and our sense of justice as a people. So every law enforcement action has three actors. Minimum. The citizen, the officer, and the government that has mandated the encounter. And each one carries a responsibility before, during, and after the conflict. So let's walk through it. Before the conflict, citizens. Citizens should have a responsibility to avoid unnecessary risk, especially when armed. Not because they lose rights, but because the stakes are so high. Officers have a responsibility to avoid unnecessary escalation, to de-escalate when they can, not because they're weak, but because they carry the authority of the state. And the government has a responsibility to design policies that minimize forced confrontations, because when the state mandates the encounter, the state owns part of the risk. It owns part of the outcome. So the question then becomes, if the government creates the encounter, who carries the burden of safety? The citizen, the officer, or the institution that put him there? During the conflict, this is where the fog of war is going to hit the hardest. Citizens must interpret commands under fear, confusion, and sensory overload. That's not easy, even for trained people. And sometimes, even then, it's not always possible. Officers must interpret ambiguous movement under the same conditions. And like I said, it's not easy, even if you're trained. And the stakes are higher for them because they bear the legal responsibility of safety of everybody involved and themselves. The government must set expectations that are realistic for human beings under stress, not idealized versions of perfect behavior. So we ask, when both sides lack full information, what principle determines who bears the greater burden of caution? After the conflict, after the smoke clears, responsibilities are going to shift. Citizens must give accurate accounts if they survive, or if they're witnesses. Officers must report honestly and transparently, even when the truth is messy. And the government must investigate impartially, even when its own agents are involved. So we ask, should post-incident evidence override real-time perception? Should real-time perception override post-incident evidence? Or should both be given equal weight? And what principle determines that balance? It's not an easy question, but it's the right one. Applying the framework to Good and Pretti, right? So now, and only now, do we bring in these cases, right? Not as narratives, not as accusations, not as political symbols. Why? Because death is tragic. Period. Stop. But as questions. What did each actor know in the moment? What did they not know? What did the camera see that they could not? What did they see that the camera did not? Who had the greater right in the moment? The aggressor, the aggressed, or neither? Were the roles unclear at any given time? What principle determines that hierarchy that we're going to establish to those? Did the citizens escalate? Did the officers escalate? Did the government create conditions for escalation? What responsibilities did each actor carry before, during, and after the conflict? Were those responsibilities met by each person? Were they possible to meet? These are not questions with easy answers, especially if you're coming at them through the lens of an ideologue, which it seems both sides are doing. But they're the only questions that really matter. And here's the heart of the problem. We are judging with full information. They acted with partial information. We get to judge slowly. Many are not, but we get to. They had to act in seconds or fractions of a second. We judge from safety. They are acting under fear. But here's the modern twist. The part nobody wants to admit, but everybody sees and knows, and both accuses the other side of doing. And based on what I saw in my research, they are both doing. With today's technology, full information isn't always full. AI manipulation, selective editing, and framing can distort what we think we are seeing. We have more footage, more angles, more commentary than any generation before us, yet somehow we have no idea what the hell is going on. But without the considerable time and effort to review and study cases, like the kind of work I've put in over the last couple of weeks, most people know little more than the actors themselves. And often, seems like they know less. Because what they do know usually comes from what they consider a trusted source that generally has an agenda, a narrative, or a preferred villain. So the question becomes, if our knowledge is filtered, framed, or incomplete, even with modern technology, should our judgment be harsher or more restrained, or something else entirely? And this is a contradiction we currently all have to face. So in closing, we cannot know what they know. We cannot feel what they felt. We cannot see what they saw. But we can ask better questions. We can demand better policy. We can insist that principles survive the fog of war and political ideology. And if we actually want fewer tragedies, fewer good cases, fewer Pretti cases, then something has to change. Maybe it's our policies, maybe our expectations, maybe our understanding of conflict itself, but something has to change. And both sides are responsible. I'm going to say something very unpopular. Renee Good and Alex Pretti were partially responsible for their demise. The authorities were partially responsible for their demise. The government was partially responsible for their demise, and the media and political pundits are entirely responsible for increased pressure and heat in our society. Things have to change. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. And If these questions still bother you after this video, good. Sit with them for a while, because that's where real understanding begins. Socratic vet, out.